Karen blocked a fire hydrant next to my house. 1 minute later, I rolled up with a tanker truck. The day Karen parked her gleaming white SUV in front of the fire hydrant next to my house, I knew trouble was brewing. It wasn't just the audacity of blocking a hydrant on a narrow street in our sleepy suburban neighborhood, it was the way she did it. She'd angled the car so it hogged not just the hydrant, but half the sidewalk, her bumper kissing the red-painted curb like she was staking a claim. I stood on my porch, coffee mug steaming in the crisp morning air, watching her climb out in her yoga pants and oversized sunglasses, tossing her blonde ponytail with the confidence of someone who believed rules were for other people. I'm not a confrontational guy. My name's Tom, and I've lived in this cul-de-sac for 10 years, tending my garden, waving at neighbors, and keeping my head down. But Karen? She'd moved in 6 months ago and turned our quiet street into her personal stage. She'd yell at kids for riding bikes too close to her lawn, leave passive-aggressive notes on cars parked too near her driveway, and once called the HOA because Mrs. Delaney's roses were encroaching on her aesthetic. So when I saw her SUV squatting in front of the hydrant, I felt a spark of something unfamiliar, petty, glorious defiance. "Karen," I called, stepping off the porch. She didn't turn, just kept scrolling her phone, her manicured nails clicking against the screen. I tried again, louder. "Karen, you can't park there. It's a fire hydrant." She finally glanced up, her lips pursed like she'd tasted something sour. "Tom, relax. I'm just running into Starbucks. 5 minutes, tops." She waved a hand dismissively, her bangles jangling. "No one's setting your house on fire today." "It's not about my house," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "It's illegal. And dangerous. What if there's an emergency?" She rolled her eyes, already turning away. "Emergencies don't happen in places like this, Tom. Chill." And with that, she sauntered off, her sneakers squeaking on the pavement. I stood there, fuming, my coffee going cold. The hydrant wasn't just a random fixture, it was a lifeline. Last summer, a brush fire had come within a mile of our neighborhood, and the memory of sirens and smoke still lingered. Karen's nonchalance wasn't just annoying, it was reckless. I could have called the cops or the tow company, but that felt too easy, too predictable. Karen needed a lesson, something she'd remember. That's when I remembered Uncle Ray. Uncle Ray wasn't really my uncle, more like a family friend who'd been around since I was a kid. He was a retired firefighter with a penchant for collecting odd vehicles, think vintage hearses, a decommissioned ambulance, and, most importantly, a 1980s water tanker truck he'd bought at a surplus auction. Ray lived a few blocks away, and his toys were the talk of the town. I pulled out my phone and dialed him. "Tommy." Ray's gravelly voice boomed through the speaker. "What's up, kid? Ray, you still got that tanker truck?" He chuckled. "Oh well, Betsy. She's sitting in the garage, ready to roll." "What?" I explained the situation, my words tumbling out with a mix of exasperation and glee. Ray didn't hesitate. "Gimme 10 minutes, he said. "This is gonna be fun." 9 minutes later, I heard the rumble before I saw it. Betsy rolled into the cul-de-sac, a hulking beast of a truck, its faded red paint glinting in the sun. Ray was at the wheel, his baseball cap tilted back, grinning like a kid on Christmas. The tanker was a monster, 10 tons of steel with a 2,000-gallon tank that could drown a small village. Neighbors poked their heads out of windows, kids on bikes stopped to stare, and I felt a surge of adrenaline. This was going to be epic. Ray pulled up next to Karen's SUV, the truck's shadow swallowing her car whole. He hopped out, his boots thudding on the asphalt, and gave me a wink. "You sure about this, Tommy?" "Never been surer," I said, glancing at the hydrant. "Let's make a point." Ray didn't need convincing. He grabbed the hose from the truck's side, a thick, coiled beast that looked like it could knock down a wall. He connected it to the hydrant legally, I might add, since Ray still had his firefighter credentials, and cranked the valve. Water exploded out, a geyser of pressure that hit Karen's SUV like a tidal wave. The car rocked on its suspension, water cascading over the hood, the windows, the roof. It was a beautiful, chaotic symphony, the spray catching the sunlight in a rainbow mist. I couldn't help but laugh. It was absurd, over the top, and exactly what Karen deserved. Neighbors were now fully out on their lawns, phones raised, recording the spectacle. Mrs. Delaney, the Rose Lady, clapped her hands like she was at a concert. Even the kids were cheering, chanting, "Soak it! Soak it!" That's when Karen came sprinting back, her Starbucks cup tumbling to the ground. "What the hell is this?" she screamed, her ponytail bouncing wildly. "Tom, are you insane? Stop it. Stop it right now." Ray, ever the showman, turned the hose slightly, sending a gentle arc of water her way, not enough to soak her, just enough to make her jump back. "Ma'am," he said, his voice dripping with mock politeness, "you're parked in front of a fire hydrant. This is a public safety demonstration." "Public safety?" Karen's face was red, her sunglasses askew. "You're ruining my car. I'll sue you. I'll sue all of you." "Go ahead," I said, crossing my arms. "Explain to the judge why you thought a fire hydrant was your personal parking spot." The crowd laughed, and Karen's eyes darted around, realizing she was the villain in this story. She stormed to her SUV, yanking the door open as water dripped from the mirrors. "This isn't over, Tom," she hissed, slamming the door and peeling out, tires squealing. Ray shut off the hose, and the street fell quiet except for the drip-drip of water and the scattered applause from the neighbors. I felt like a hero, a petty, triumphant hero. But as Ray coiled the hose and climbed back into Betsy, something nagged at me. Karen's parting words, "This isn't over," felt heavier than they should have. I brushed it off, figuring she was just embarrassed. How much trouble could she really cause? That night, I couldn't sleep. The high of the tanker truck's stunt had faded, replaced by a vague unease. I kept replaying Karen's expression, not just anger, but something colder, more calculated. Around midnight, I heard a noise outside, a soft crunch like footsteps on gravel. I peered out my window, but the street was dark, the hydrant gleaming faintly under a streetlight. Nothing seemed amiss. I told myself I was being paranoid and went back to bed. The next morning, I woke to chaos. My front yard was a mess, me carefully tended flower beds trampled, my mailbox tipped over, and a spray-painted message on my driveway. "You'll regret this." The neighbors were buzzing, whispering about vandalism, but no one had seen anything. I called the police, who took a report but said there wasn't much to go on without witnesses or cameras. Karen's SUV was parked neatly in her driveway, not a scratch on it, and when I knocked on her door, she answered with a saccharine smile. "Tom, what a surprise," she said, her voice dripping with fake concern. "I heard about your yard. Such a shame. Kids these days, right?" I wanted to call her out, but I had no proof. The day passed in a blur of cleaning up and fielding sympathetic neighbors, all while Karen's words echoed in my head. "You'll regret this." I started to wonder if I'd underestimated her. Then came the twist I never saw coming. Late that afternoon, a beat-up pickup truck pulled into the cul-de-sac, driven by a guy I'd never seen before. He was wiry, with a scruffy beard and a flannel shirt, and he hopped out carrying a clipboard. "You Tom?" he asked, squinting at me. "Yeah," I said, wary. "Who are you?" "Name's Mike. I'm with the city." He handed me a notice, his face grim. "Got a complaint about an unauthorized water discharge yesterday. Says you and some guy with a tanker truck caused property damage." My stomach dropped. Property damage? It was a fire hydrant. We were making a point about public safety. Mike shrugged. "Not my call. Complainant says you flooded her car, ruined the interior. She's got pictures, witness statements, the works. You're looking at a fine, maybe a lawsuit." "Karen," I muttered, my blood boiling. "She set this up." Mike raised an eyebrow. "Didn't catch a name. But she's got pull. Filed the complaint through a lawyer friend. You might want to get one too." I stood there, dumbfounded, as Mike drove off. Karen hadn't just retaliated, she'd played me like a fiddle. The water stunt, the cheering neighbors, the viral moment, it was all ammunition she'd turned against me. I thought I'd won, but she'd been 3 steps ahead, waiting for me to trip. As the sun set, I sat on my porch, staring at the hydrant. Ray called to check in, laughing about the epic soak, but I couldn't muster a chuckle. Karen's SUV sat smugly in her driveway, and I realized this wasn't just about a parking spot anymore. It was a war, and I'd fired the first shot without knowing the enemy. The days following Mike's visit were a blur of dread and second-guessing. I'd thought my tanker truck stunt was a stroke of genius, a harmless way to put Karen in her place. But now, with a city notice in my hand and the threat of a lawsuit looming, I realized I'd poked a bear with a law degree and a grudge. My quiet life, once filled with the simple joys of tending my garden and chatting with neighbors, felt like it was unraveling. I called Ray to fill him in, expecting his usual bravado, but even he sounded rattled. "Tommy, I didn't think she'd go this far, he said, his voice low. I'll cover half the fine if it comes to that. But you gotta watch your back. She's not playing. His words stuck with me, a reminder that my impulsive act had dragged him into the mess too. Guilt gnawed at me, but so did anger. Karen wasn't just fighting dirty, she was rewriting the story to make me the villain. I decided to dig deeper. If Karen was going to play the legal card, I needed evidence to fight back. I started by talking to the neighbors, hoping someone had seen her vandalize my yard. Mrs. Delaney, ever the gossip, swore she'd seen a shadow near my house that night, but couldn't be sure it was Karen. She's got those sneaky eyes, though, she whispered, clutching her pruning shears. Wouldn't put it past her. The kids on bikes were less helpful, too busy reenacting the tanker truck scene with water guns to care about my plight. I was hitting dead ends. Then came another twist, one that shifted everything. On Wednesday, I was raking the last of the trampled dirt from my flower beds when a timid knock sounded at my door. I opened it to find Lily, a shy teenager who lived 2 houses down. She was clutching a notebook, her braces glinting as she bit her lip. Mr. Tom, she said, barely audible. I saw something. About your yard. My heart raced. What did you see, Lily? She glanced over her shoulder, like Karen might pop out of the bushes. That night, when your flowers got messed up, I was up late, working on a school project. I saw someone in a hoodie by your driveway, spraying paint. I didn't think much of it then, but I recorded it. She held up her phone, her hands trembling. I was filming the moon for my astronomy homework. It's kind of blurry, but you can see them. I invited her in, my pulse pounding. The video was grainy, shot from her upstairs window, but it clearly showed a figure in a dark hoodie spraying my driveway. The timestamp matched the night of the vandalism. The figure's face wasn't visible, but their build was slight, not Karen's athletic frame. Lily, I said, trying to stay calm, this is huge. Can you send me this? She nodded, but her eyes were wide with fear. Please don't tell anyone it was me. My mom says Karen's friends with the HOA president. She could make trouble for us. I promised to keep her secret, my mind racing. The video wasn't a smoking gun, but it was something. Maybe Karen hadn't done the vandalism herself, maybe she'd hired someone. The thought made my blood run cold. How far was she willing to go? Armed with Lily's video, I decided to confront Karen, but not head-on. I needed to be smart. I printed a still from the footage, blurry but incriminating, and slipped it into an envelope with a note. I know what you did. Back off, or this goes to the police. I left it in her mailbox at dusk, feeling like a character in a bad thriller. It was a gamble, but I hoped it would scare her into dropping the complaint. The next morning, I woke to a surprise. Karen's SUV was gone, and in its place was a moving van. Movers were hauling boxes out of her house, stacking them in the truck with mechanical efficiency. I stepped outside, stunned, as Mrs. Delaney hurried over, her eyes gleaming. She's leaving, Tom. Word is, she got a job offer in another state. Good riddance. I should have felt triumphant, but something felt off. Karen wasn't the type to run from a fight. I watched the movers, searching for her, but she was nowhere in sight. Then I saw him, Mike, the city worker, leaning against the moving van, chatting with a mover. He caught my eye and gave a small nod, like we were in on a secret. My stomach twisted. Was this connected to the notice? To Lily's video? I didn't have time to dwell on it. That afternoon, Ray called with bad news. The city's upping the ante, he said. Karen's lawyer claims the water damaged her car's electronics. They're asking for 10 grand, Tommy, and they're saying I violated my firefighter credentials by using the hydrant. $10,000. The number hit like a punch. I didn't have that kind of money, and Ray, living on a pension, sure didn't either. Ray, I'm so sorry, I said, my voice cracking. This is my fault. Nah, kid, he said, but his usual cheer was gone. We both thought it was a laugh. Just figure out what's next, yeah? I hung up, feeling like the ground was crumbling beneath me. The tanker truck stunt, once a moment of petty glory, now felt like a reckless mistake. I'd wanted to teach Karen a lesson, but I'd hurt Ray, scared Lily, and turned my neighborhood into a battleground. And Karen? She was slipping away, leaving me to clean up the mess. Desperate, I went to the city hall to contest the notice. The clerk, a tired woman with a name tag reading Gloria, pulled up the complaint. This is odd, she muttered, squinting at her screen. The complainant withdrew the claim this morning. No reason given. I blinked. Withdrew? You mean it's over? Looks like it, Gloria said, shrugging. You're off the hook. For now. I left City Hall in a daze, relief warring with suspicion. Why would Karen drop the complaint? Was it my note? Or something else? I drove home, my mind spinning, and found a letter taped to my door. No envelope, just a folded sheet of paper with my name scrawled in Sharpie. Inside was Karen's handwriting, neat and precise. Tom, you win. I'm leaving. But don't think you're the hero. Ask Ray about the hydrant. K. My hands shook as I read it again. Ask Ray about the hydrant? What did that mean? I called Ray, but his phone went to voicemail. I drove to his house, my heart pounding, and found him in his garage, tinkering with Betsy. He looked up, his face weary, and I held up the letter. Ray, what's she talking about? What about the hydrant? He sighed, setting down his wrench. Tommy, I didn't think it'd come to this. He leaned against the truck, his eyes distant. That hydrant's been out of service for years. City never fixed it after the last drought. I knew it, but I didn't tell you. Thought it'd make the stunt funnier spraying her car with a useless hydrant. Didn't think she'd turn it into a lawsuit. I stared at him, the pieces falling into place. The hydrant was a relic, a prop in our prank. Karen must have known maybe through her HOA connections and used it to bait me into a fight she could win. My righteous anger, my public safety crusade, was built on a lie. And Ray, my partner in crime, had let me believe it. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, my voice hollow. Didn't think it mattered, he said, rubbing his neck. Then it snowballed. I'm sorry, kid. I drove home in silence, the letter crumpled in my fist. Karen was gone, the complaint dropped, but the victory felt like ashes. My garden was ruined, my friendship with Ray strained, and Lily was still scared to walk past Karen's empty house. I'd wanted justice, but all I'd done was sow chaos. That night, I sat on my porch, staring at the hydrant. It stood there, mocking me, its red paint chipped and faded. I thought about the fire last summer, the fear in my neighbor's eyes, and how I'd used that memory to justify my stunt. I thought about Karen, her smug smile, and how she'd played me from the start. And I thought about Ray, who tried to make me laugh and ended up caught in the fallout. The next morning, I started rebuilding my garden. It was slow work, but it felt right. Mrs. Delaney brought me rose cuttings, and Lily stopped by to help, her notebook tucked under her arm. We didn't talk about Karen or the hydrant, just plants and stars, and the small things that make a neighborhood home. Ray came by too, offering a sheepish grin and a six-pack of beer. We didn't fix everything, but we started. Karen's house sold a month later to a young couple with a dog. The cul-de-sac settled back into its rhythm, but I never looked at the hydrant the same way. It was a reminder of how quickly pride can turn to regret, how a moment of defiance can ripple into pain. I thought I was teaching Karen a lesson, but the real lesson was mine. Sometimes, the fight isn't worth the cost. What do you think? Was Tom right to take a stand, or did his prank go too far? Was Karen the villain, or just a master of the game? Share your thoughts. There's no right answer, only perspectives.